Welcome to Up Close. I'm Ricardo Rico with my co-host Cynthia Brown and Jessica Lane. Here we bring you news from a more positive perspective. In international news, a 2-year-old Chinese girl that was left unattended fell 10 stories from her family's apartment window and survived after being caught by a woman passing by. The toddler was in critical condition Sunday with internal bleeding and other unspecified injuries, while the woman who saved her suffered a broken arm. The girl, who was nicknamed Nunu, was in the care of her grandmother on Saturday afternoon when the older woman left the 10th-story apartment to run an errand. Neighbors reported seeing the girl dangling from the apartment window for several minutes. Now, when the neighbors saw her shoes fall to the ground, they ran to catch the child. The woman who caught her said she thought of her own 7-month-old son, who had once fallen from a high chair and cut his mouth. Now, the impact knocked the woman out, sent her crumbling to the ground, along with breaking her left arm, but there seems to be no permanent injuries to the child. Nice. God's grace at work. Now to Jessica with national news.
In national news, a Northern California family must pay $750,000 for a massive '07 wildfire that destroyed papers written by Nobel Prize-winning physicist Albert Einstein. Margaret Pavez was found responsible for starting a 75-square-mile wildfire in September of '07 after she used a metal barrel to burn paper plates and left the blaze unattended. The fire ended up destroying 4 homes and 20 outbuildings, mostly in Henrico State Park. The lawsuit specifically addressed the contents of a safe inside. One of the cabins had held dozens of papers and calculations and notes handwritten by Einstein. The lawyer for the defendants told Mercury News that 3 Pavez family members were sued because of all of them knowing about the barrel fire and the risks. An attorney for Ernest Pavez told the Mercury News that he has plans to seek a new trial because $750,000 is excessive. Now to Cynthia with the Texas news. Cynthia?
Thanks, Jessica. In Texas news, the discussion about education and funding has been escalating, and a recent movement is planning to be a part of that discussion. The centerpiece of the movement, known as the 7 Breakthrough Solutions, promoted by the conservative Texas Public Policy Foundation, calls for treating students as customers, judging faculty by how many students they teach and how those students rate them, and to focus on research that produces an immediate financial return. The proposed remedies, which also include basing tenure decisions largely on teaching skill and student satisfaction surveys and providing higher education funding directly to students rather than to the universities, are viewed by some as oversimplifying. The uproar against this new plan is at UT and Texas A&M University. The UT report warns that implementing the proposals could leave Texas with only one Tier 1 school, Rice University, which is private and enrolls fewer than 4,000 undergraduates. It would save money for families who are paying tuition, he said. It would save the resources of the institution. In other news, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Roy Williams has talked to his lawyers after his breakup with his ex-girlfriend, the Miss Texas Brooke Daniels. Their marriage plans fizzled in February, and he wants the ring back. He is suing for $76,000, an engagement ring, along with a recorded marriage proposal he mailed to her, according to the Dallas Morning News. Roy Williams claimed in a signed affidavit that Brooke Daniels said she lost the engagement ring several weeks after she turned down his previous mail proposal. An investigation from Williams' insurance company determined Daniels' father, Michael, had the ring in his possession.
And now let's take a look at our Christian sports report with Amber Malmay.
Thank you, Ricardo. Wimbledon tennis wrapped up this weekend with Petrova Vitova defeating the higher-ranked Maria Sharapova in the women's final to claim her first Grand Slam. On the men's side, Novak Djokovic ousted defending Wimbledon champion Rafael Nadal 3-1. The United States women's soccer team has guaranteed themselves a berth in the World Cup quarterfinal by dominating Colombia 3-0, recently beating Sweden 3-0. They guaranteed themselves a spot in the quarterfinals against Brazil. The UST Smash Zone, a youth tennis attraction held annually at the U.S. Open, made a stop recently on its nationwide tour in Joplin, Missouri, hoping to inspire the youth who witnessed the devastation of the tornadoes that destroyed much of the city this past May. In addition to putting on this event nearby Missouri, Southern State University, the UST has pledged a donation of $100,000 for disaster relief. In this week's Focus Point, the Christian Sports Report is looking at former University of Texas defensive end Sam Acho. Acho, a member of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, was recently given the Big 12 Sportsmanship Person of the Year award. This was a no-brainer. Not only is Acho a force on the field terrorizing quarterbacks, he is also the recipient of the Campbell Trophy, which is awarded to the football's top student athlete. His former University of Texas coach, Mack Brown, has described Acho as the most unbelievable kid ever. But talent and smarts won't win you on the Sports Person of the Year on its own. You have to show service to the community, and Sam Acho has done that as well. Acho's father, Sonny, had started a mission in Nigeria called Living Hope Ministries. Every summer, the Acho men take a team of doctors to rural Nigeria and deliver and administer medicine and health care to the poor. Sam has made the trip 5 different times and has described the experience by saying, "There are so many things that we take for granted, things that we think we deserve. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, but half of my family is still in Nigeria in a small village. I could have just as easily been one of those kids who is excited when Americans come over with food, candy, or medicine. But for some reason, God allowed me to be born here with all these privileges, none of which I deserve by any means." Acho was selected 103rd overall by Arizona Cardinals, who are excited to have him aboard. Acho plans to garner the attention of other NFL players to help in Nigeria. He also hopes to raise enough money to build a permanent hospital for his father's ministry. In a time when professional sports are sometimes clouded with corruption and greed, Sam Acho is a breath of fresh air. Pending lockout aside, we look forward to seeing Sam in action this weekend. Texas needs football almost as much as we need rain. And that's this week's Christian Sports Report. Back to you, Ricardo.
And now Jessica has our offbeat story.
In our offbeat story, predictions have been made that the first person who will live to see their 150th birthday has already been born. And the first person to live for 1,000 years could be less than 20 years younger. A biomedical, gerontologist, and chief scientist of a foundation dedicated to longevity research, DeGray reckons that within his own lifetime, doctors could have all the tools they need to cure aging, banishing diseases that come with it, and extending life indefinitely. DeGray sees a time when people will go to their doctors for regular maintenance, which by then will include gene therapies, stem cell therapies, immune stimulation, and a range of other advanced medical techniques to keep them in good shape. Fast life expectancy will increase in the future is a subject of some debate, but the trend is clear. An average of 3 months is being added to life expectancy every year at the moment. There could be 1 million centenarians across the world by 2030. To date, the world's longest living person on record lived to 122, and in Japan alone, there were more than 44,000 centenarians in 2010. Cynthia?
Thank you. In entertainment news, Alexandra Pelosi traveled the country interviewing new citizens for her documentary, Citizen USA, a 50-state road trip. The new citizens included Iraqi refugees in Nebraska, Mexicans who crossed illegally into Arizona, a Nigerian from Kentucky, and a Buddhist monk in Utah. Pelosi's husband and co-producer, Michael Voss, became a citizen after their children were born. They were inspired by the event to travel to naturalization ceremonies in all 50 states, interviewing other recent Americans. They found people who were grateful for things many Americans take for granted, whether it was free speech, clean water, police who respond when you call 911, the right to drive, or gun ownership. Citizen USA, a 50-state road trip, premieres at 9 p.m. Monday on HBO.
Interesting. Here at Upclose, we like to wrap up with a fun fact, a joke, and a quote. So for the fun fact, did you know that George Washington was deathly afraid of being buried alive? And after he died, they wanted to lay him out, or he wanted to be laid out for 3 days just to make sure that he was really dead. Imagine the smell. Our joke of the day.
Thanks, Ricardo. Any sports fan can tell you the most brutal thing about professional football is the price of the tickets. Now to Jessica with the quote of the day.
Thank you, Cynthia. For our quote of the day, it is by Oliver Wendell Holmes, who said, "One flag, one land, one heart, one hand, one nation, evermore." I am Jessica Elaine with my co-hosts Ricardo Rico and Cynthia Brown. Tune in next time with us at Up Close.